Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something that's been kind of brewing for a while.
Yeah.
This whole thing with China, the UK, and the US.
Right.
It's like a giant game of global chess, kind of.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
Right, exactly. And every move just
Yeah.
has these huge ripple effects across the whole world.
Yep.
So we found this great article to kind of
Yes.
unpack all this stuff.
Okay.
It's called U.S. Hit Hard as China Cuts Debt Links and Strengthens Ties with the UK.
Interesting title.
Yeah, so there's a lot to dig into here.
For sure.
But I think the biggest question is, how is the UK navigating all of this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's such a complicated situation.
It is very complex.
It's not just about, who's buying what from who.
Right.
It's about these big alliances and
Yeah.
technology.
Mhm.
And I think even, it even affects your wallet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
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 So how about we start with one of the biggest things I noticed in the article.
Oh,
It seems like China is really making a move away from relying on the U.S. dollar.
yeah, that's been a trend for a while now.
Right.
They're really aiming to establish themselves as like a major global player in finance.
So it's kind of like China's saying, hey, we're not going to play by your rules anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to create our own system.
Wow. And how are they doing that?
Well, one way is they're issuing their own dollar-denominated bonds.
Okay. What does that mean?
So basically, these bonds are kind of like IOUs that other countries can buy.
I see.
And at the same time, they've been decreasing their holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds.
So those are like loans to the U.S. government, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So they're kind of pulling back from the U.S. system.
Yeah, they're creating their own kind of financial game with
Hmm.
different rules, you could say.
Wow. And what does that mean for the U.S.? Like, how is this impacting them?
Well, it could cost the U.S. trillions of dollars in the long run.
Yes.
Potentially. Yeah, if the dollar loses its position as like the world's leading reserve currency.
Oh, wow. So, like, if other countries stop using the dollar as much?
Exactly. It's like, imagine you're trying to buy something online from another country,
Uh-huh.
and instead of using dollars, you have to like exchange your money for a different currency first.
All right.
It'd be a huge hassle.
Yeah, that sounds like a real headache.
Yeah, a big one for everyone involved.
And so where does the UK fit into all of this?
Yeah, so the UK is really interesting because they're super reliant on both the US and China for trade.
Yeah, I can see how that would be tricky.
Right. It's a tough spot to be in. It's like walking a tightrope, you know?
Totally. They're trying to stay friends with both these superpowers while they're kind of at odds.
Right, exactly. It's like they're caught in this tug of war.
And this article really highlights how the UK is turning more towards China,
Uh-huh.
especially when it comes to things like electric vehicles.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Right. China's a leader in that whole electric vehicle world.
For sure. They've got the technology and the manufacturing power.
And a massive market.
Huge. Yeah. So it makes sense for the UK to look in that direction.
I could see that. But what about this whole tech war everyone keeps talking about?
Oh, yeah, that's another big piece of this puzzle.
What exactly does that mean?
So basically, it's a race for control over all these cutting-edge technologies.
Like what kind of technologies?
Well, the biggest one is semiconductors.
Okay.
You know, those tiny little chips that are in everything these days.
Right. In our phones and computers.
Exactly. And in cars and pretty much everything electronic.
So whoever controls those controls the future.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
big deal. And the competition's getting really intense.
It sounds like it. So what happens if China gets ahead in this race? What are the consequences?
Well, they're projected to control almost 40% of global chip production by 2027.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. And they're already dominating in other areas like solar panels.
How did they do that?
Well, they basically drove down costs through their massive production capacity.
Right. They can just make so much stuff.
Exactly. And if they can replicate that success with semiconductors, it could really shift the balance of power.
So the U.S. is trying to stop that from happening.
Yeah, the Biden administration has been taking a lot of steps to curb China's chip industry.
So it's like a high-stakes game of technological chess.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And the article brings up this really interesting example of the UK car industry.
Oh, yeah, the Vauxhall plant closing down.
Yeah, that's a powerful symbol of the UK's dilemma.
How so?
Well, on one hand, they're trying to protect jobs and industries at home.
Right.
But on the other hand, they're being drawn towards all these economic opportunities that China offers.
So it's a tough choice.
Yeah, a really tough one for the UK and for a lot of countries around the world.
So it seems like China's influence is growing in both finance and technology.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway here.
And it's really making things complicated for everyone.
Definitely. It's a whole new world order that's emerging.
And we're right in the middle of it.
Exactly. We're all figuring this out as we go.
Which makes it all the more important to understand what's happening.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
We have, but we've got a lot more to discuss.
For sure.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back with part 2, where we'll look at what the future holds for all of this.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. See you in a bit. Okay, so we're seeing all this stuff happening with China. You know, they're getting more and more influential in finance and in tech. So, like, where does this all go? What's the future hold for these 3 countries? And, you know, what does it all mean for, like, the average person?
Yeah, good question.
The article mentions 2025.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that's going to be a pivotal year or something.
It does feel like we're kind of on the edge of a cliff right now.
Right.
Like things are going to change in a big way.
Yeah, so let's say
Okay.
things keep heating up between the U.S. and China. What kind of moves might we see from each side?
Well, I think from the U.S. side, we're going to see them keep trying to restrict China's access to technology,
Okay.
especially in those key areas like semiconductors and AI.
So like more sanctions and stuff?
Probably, yeah. Tighter export controls, but also a big push for more domestic manufacturing.
Oh, so they want to make more stuff in America.
Exactly. They want to be less reliant on those Chinese supply chains.
But wouldn't that make things more expensive for consumers?
Yeah, that's the trade-off they're grappling with.
Yeah.
National security versus economic competitiveness.
Right.
It's tough. There's no easy answer there.
And what about China? How are they going to respond to all this pressure?
Well, I think they're going to keep doing what they're doing. Doubling down on their strategy of self-reliance.
Oh.
More investments in their own industries.
Especially in those high-tech areas.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're basically saying, hey, we don't need you.
Wow. So they're calling the U.S.'s bluff.
Kinda. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the article also mentions that they could get a lot more aggressive.
Oh, really? In what way?
Well, they could restrict exports of some really important materials.
Like what?
Things like rare earth elements. Those are crucial for a lot of high-tech stuff.
Oh, right. I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're in everything.
Yeah.
From smartphones to electric car batteries.
So they could kind of hold those hostage.
Exactly. It would be a way to put pressure on the U.S. and other countries.
Wow. And there's that whole thing about them selling off their U.S. Treasury bonds.
Right. That would be a huge move.
Like a nuclear option or something.
Yeah, it would definitely send shockwaves through the whole global financial system.
Right. So we've got all this tension.
Yeah.
It's like economic and technological, and it's all playing out on this global scale. So what does it mean for, like, you and me?
Yeah, good question.
Like, what should people be paying attention to in their own lives?
Well, one thing is that the world is becoming more divided.
Divided.
Yeah, both economically and politically. It's like globalization is going in reverse.
So what does that mean?
Well, it could mean higher prices for a lot of stuff.
Like what?
Electronics, for sure. Other goods, too, as those supply chains get all messed up.
Okay, so, like, my new phone is going to cost more?
Possible, yeah.
And is there anything else?
Well, this whole thing could slow down global trade, which would hurt economic growth for everyone.
Oh, wow.
It's not a good situation.
And what about the UK?
Right. They're in a tough spot.
So what's their best move?
It's tricky. They need to maintain good relationships with both the U.S. and China,
Right.
but also protect their own interests.
Yeah, that sounds like a real balancing act.
It is. Any wrong move could have some serious consequences.
So do you think they can pull it off?
Well, the UK has always been pretty adaptable.
Right, they've been through a lot.
Exactly. So I think they've got a chance.
It's going to be tough.
Oh, yeah. It'll take careful planning and some smart decision-making.
Let's hope they make the right choices.
Yeah, the stakes are high for everyone.
Well, you've definitely given us a lot to think about.
It's a complicated situation.
It is. But I think it's so important to understand what's happening.
I agree. It's shaping the world around us.
Exactly. So we'll be right back with part 3, where we'll wrap things up and leave you with some final thoughts. All right, so we've talked about a lot of stuff today.
Yeah, we have.
You know, China and the U.S. kind of going at it, the whole semiconductor thing,
Right.
and the U.K. trying to figure out where they fit in.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But I think it's really important to understand these things.
I agree.
You know, they're shaping the world around us right now.
Absolutely.
It can feel kind of overwhelming, though.
Yeah, it can be a bit much sometimes.
Right, so much is changing.
Yeah, but you know, even with all the uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
I think there are opportunities here too.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, think about it. This is a chance for innovation,
Okay.
new ideas, new ways of doing things,
Right.
and it's also a chance for collaboration.
So you're saying this could be a good thing?
It could be.
Hmm. We've talked about a lot of the downsides.
Yeah, like higher prices and slower economic growth.
Right, and all the division.
But what about the upsides? What could a new world order look like?
Well, for a country like the UK, this could be a real opportunity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they could use their unique position to become like a bridge.
A bridge.
Yeah, between the US and China.
So instead of getting pulled apart,
Right,
they could be the thing that holds everything together.
exactly. They could help facilitate trade and technology exchange. Maybe even mediate some of these disputes.
That's a pretty big role.
It is, but it could be really beneficial in the long run.
And do you think other countries could find their own place in this new world?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
The article talks about how China's influence is creating a lot of opportunities for
Right.
countries that are willing to engage with them.
Like who?
Well, we're already seeing it in Africa.
Oh, yeah.
China's investing a lot there, helping build infrastructure and boost their economies.
So it's not just about the U.S. and China.
Right. It's becoming a more multipolar world.
Okay, so instead of one big superpower.
We might have a bunch of different power centers.
Exactly. And that comes with its own challenges, of course.
Right. Like what?
Well, you got to manage all these complex relationships,
Yeah.
navigate competing interests.
But there are potential benefits too, right?
For sure.
Like what?
Well, it could lead to a more balanced global system,
Okay.
maybe even a more equitable one.
So more cooperation, less conflict, hopefully.
Well, that's the idea.
Well, I like that idea.
Me too.
So it sounds like things are going to keep changing.
Oh, yeah, this is just the beginning.
And the big question is how it's all going to play out.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where I think we all have a role to play.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not enough to just watch the news and feel helpless.
Right.
We need to understand these changes and engage with them.
Hmm.
Stay informed, question assumptions, consider different perspectives.
So we can help shape the future.
Exactly. Make it a future that reflects our values and our hopes.
That's a really powerful thought.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of all this chaos, we still have agency.
Well said. I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
It has. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And thanks to all of you listening out there.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
We hope you found it insightful.
And thought-provoking.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the issues that matter.
See you next time.
Until then, stay curious.